This is Changemakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
I'm back with Changemaker Elizabeth Strojan, the Executive Director of the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. With a focus on resident engagement, property improvements, and long-term strategic planning, she is committed to restoring pride, safety, and security for the over 30,000 residents her housing authority serves. So, Elizabeth, we wrapped up part one talking about your pursuit of a more holistic, resident-centered approach at the Louisville Metro Housing Authority, even with the significant resource and operational challenges it presents. Can you tell me more about your will to accomplish this?
I'm willing to do it, and also I don't think we have a choice. Affordable housers exist to provide safe, quality, affordable housing. So from a policy perspective, from an ideological perspective, I agree that housing is housing. That's what we're funded for. That's what we should be doing. You know, I remember being uncomfortable at times when we started talking a lot about health in housing and green housing and all these things, because I just thought we're not funded for any of those things. Like, if we're going to be responsible for people's health outcomes as housers, where's the funding from the health providers? Like, where is that? So I totally get, and I have been there, when people say we're just housers. Like, we don't do that. We're not supportive housing. We're public housing. I agree. Housing is a spectrum, and we all have our role to play. And if the entire housing market is functioning the way it's supposed to be functioning, affordable housers and public housers would not be tasked with doing things beyond their mandate. But that's just not the world we live in. I mean, I came into an agency where we are housing hundreds and hundreds of households with serious mental illness that are not getting any mental illness services, or if they are, they're not enough. So it's really not, I don't see it as a choice. I see it as, if we want to successfully house these people, which is our mandate, we have to forge the partnerships, we have to find the funding. So I think what we need to do as an affordable housing industry is figure out where are the gaps in the housing spectrum that we need to figure out how to fill. What are the new models that we need to figure out how to do? And we need to fight like hell. Sorry for the pay channel language there. That we need to fight like hell to get the financing we need to do it. In a time when, you know, the only games in town really are low-income housing tax credits and Section 8 vouchers, like those are really the bread and butter of what people are using to finance developments. That's a lot to ask people when you only have those tools to also do pretty significant services. So what do we need to be asking for from Congress? What do we need to be setting up and modeling that we can push for as an industry to get what we need?
Well, we are here for it, and we're here to cheer you along, because it's one thing to have the roof. It's one thing not to have the access, but then it's a completely other thing to talk about mental health obstacles that are preventing them from stabilizing their own lives and then thriving in that life. And that thriving component is something that we don't get to talk about a lot. And the mental health obstacles and the education obstacles and all of the other types of metrics, those really have to come in a very comprehensive conversation and a housing model. But yet, I'm not sure why this is so controversial in our industry. So I'm glad that you're engaging in this conversation and you're developing models. So we're going to all be cheering you along, and hopefully, like you said, there can be some more pilots and evaluation and some funding that can get behind this.
Great. Yeah, I really think that the key to innovating, the key to figuring out these new models is partnerships. We are probably never at LMHA going to be mental health service providers. We have to forge the partnerships with people that do it. And we have to work to build the capacity with those groups. So I was talking in the beginning about how LMHA has seen a lot of staff leave and a lot of staff turnover, primarily in the positions that interact directly with residents. That has happened too for social service providers, mental health providers. Everybody's kind of facing a crisis with the labor market. Hopefully that will turn around soon, but we've just seen so much burnout with people that provide direct services. So, I think something that we could do as relatively well-resourced housers is to help bolster social service capacity within our partners. We're going to have to forge the partnerships and make it work. But I think the reason that people get uncomfortable with that is because we really don't have the resources to do it all. We can't be expected to do it all, but we can partner with people who can help us figure it out.
In my very simplistic vision, sometimes I sit there and think, wouldn't it be great if, your CMAP, your scoring, or some of those larger metrics that you were scored by, not as a moving to work agency, but, in general here, if you got bonus points for some kinds of creative metrics related to how your residents pursued education attainment, or if you partnered with industries who were providing extra services, and if you got bonus points for that. But that's a little more simplistic interpretation of some of those larger bricks and sticks metrics.
That's great. I love it. From your lips to HUD's ears. I really think it's that kind of thing that would help move us in that direction. I have found that disagreements in the industry often go back to resources. We are all fighting over the same shrinking pot of housing resources, whether you're doing housing for people with mental illness, or housing for single parents trying to finish school, or housing for the elderly, or housing for whatever population. We're all kind of competing for the same stuff. And so I think that also just adds pressure and can create divisions. But we are at our best as an industry when we're linking arms and pushing for more. And that's what we did in 2017 and 2018, when we had that threat of serious cuts to HUD funding. Everybody linked arms, and it was not about red state, blue state, whatever, who cares? It was about how important is public housing capital funding? How important is home investment partnership funding? How important is community development block grant funding? How much do we need Section 8 vouchers to be fully funded? And we pushed and pushed and pushed. And you'll remember the 2018 omnibus bill, HUD got a 15% increase. I might be misquoting that. It might have been 18%, but HUD got a really large increase in their overall budget that we hadn't seen in many years. And that bill also included an increase to the 9% low-income housing tax credit program and the ability to do income averaging. And then in subsequent years, we got the 4% permanent minimum rate in the low-income housing tax credit. So we had many years there where we were linking arms, speaking with one voice, putting differences aside, and just pushing, and it worked. With COVID, I think people got very tired. And there were some factions within the industry, like, what were you pushing for? What did you think was the right way to deal with that emergency and to get more funding into things? But I'd love to see us link arms again and speak with one voice. We're doing that as an industry now, to some extent, with the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, and primarily with a couple provisions within that. A provision that would lower the 50% test and private activity tax-exempt bonds, which would be extremely helpful for LMHA, as well as more 9% credits. So that's, I think, the biggest thing we have right now to kind of all speak with one voice about. But I'd love to see us link arms again and just push for more and more and more. And if what we need at LMHA is housing plus mental health services, great. If what somebody else needs in a different part of the country is a different housing model, great. But we're all going to have more resources to work with if we're all pushing together.
Speaking of linking arms, there's a bunch of people in the conversation about housing prices, rent prices, and what's happening in the market. And it used to just all be the housing people who were talking and looking and analyzing. But there's a whole bunch of other people in the conversation now as a result of what's happened after COVID and right now. Tell us what the Louisville housing market is looking like. And I'm assuming that rents have risen just like everywhere else, but give us some of that landscape so we understand the pinch on affordable housing.
Louisville is experiencing the same kind of pressures that other places are experiencing. We have seen rents increase dramatically. Louisville is primarily a home ownership town. So this is different for me. I just moved from New York, which is primarily a renter town, to Louisville, which has a lot more home ownership. And housing prices are really high compared to where they were even a few years ago. I remember years ago when I was in New York City and I would fantasize about moving home to Louisville, and I'd get on Zillow and imagine what we could afford in Louisville versus New York City. And it was pretty dramatic. And that's narrowed. That's really changed now that we're here. The housing prices are much, much higher. We primarily, too, have a big shortage of 1 and 2 bedroom rentals. And what we've had to announce in the last few weeks here at LMHA is that our most troubled public housing site needs to be vacated. So we are working on relocating 575 households into the Louisville market. And these are households moving out of efficiencies and 1 bedrooms. And it is making the entire community very nervous that we're going to just be extremely squeezed even further on that front. Of course, I've tried to calm people down. We're looking within our own portfolio. We're looking to partners. We are also doing everything we can to increase the supply of affordable housing through our resources. But that just shows you, I don't think a few years ago people would have been as nervous to have this many 1-bedroom home seekers on the market. But it's just gotten extremely tight here.
So, do you think that you're going to have to end up building, or do you think through the absorption, that's the path that you guys are going to have to use? I've done several relocations, and there are none that are easy. So, no way about going about this. It's going to be difficult. But are you predicting kind of the end location there?
For now, we're going to have to absorb into our portfolio, our partner portfolio, and into the private market with vouchers. But our plan is to redevelop the site. The site is called Dosker Manor. It's now an infamous public housing site here in the city of Louisville. It's one of our biggest. It's 692 units spread across 3 high-rises in 1 city block. It's one of the locations where we used to serve seniors, and now we're serving even more vulnerable residents, including many formerly homeless residents. It's in terrible shape, and we keep having emergencies happen, like the elevators go out. These are elevators in high rises with seniors. That's an emergency. So we unfortunately had to make the decision to relocate people out of Dosker Manor, and we are going to have to rehouse them for probably a few years before we're able to rebuild on site. What we've done to help increase the supply in the meantime, we recently put out a request for proposals for project-based vouchers, and we're hoping to support affordable housing developments at various states, various places along the development trajectory, in hopes that we can get units online pretty quickly in some of those, including in permanent supportive housing. We are requiring that a portion of all of those PBVs go to serve Dosker relocatees. Additionally, we just released a request for qualifications for co-development partners to help us redevelop the Dosker Manor site, a site across the street from that development that currently houses a vacant grocery store but has great development potential, as well as other sites within our portfolio, including a major rehabilitation of another senior high-rise. So we are open for business. We are looking for partners. We are doing everything we can to increase the supply of affordable housing here in Louisville, while we're also having to relocate people from Dosker. So we're keeping pretty busy, Katie.
It's a very complex project. Do you see emotional attachment to the property? Because that usually is a component of these complex relocations and redevelopments.
Yeah, we definitely see a spectrum There are people who, the first time I met them, residents of Dosker Manor would say, I'm ready to move. Can I have a voucher now? Please get me out of here. I also met people the first time I'm talking to them and they're saying, I'm nervous that you're going to make me move out of here. Please don't make me move. This is my community. So you've seen it, Katie. It's a mix of emotions and everybody is very anxious. We just did a survey of residents a few weeks ago. We had a third of all residents respond, which was great. These were surveys that were administered by staff and partners, all trained to do this. And they took about an hour to an hour and a half to administer. They were very in-depth surveys about what do you like about living here? What do you not like about living here? What's your dream home? What services do you use currently? What services do you need that you're not getting? So in that process, we learned that the vast majority of people living at Dosker Manor really want to move. But even if you really want to move, even if you're showing up to a relocation meeting with your bags packed, there's still a tremendous amount of anxiety. So what we are trying to do is to be as honest as possible about the possibilities for where they can live. And we are offering as much support as we can possibly give. We are looking to utilize the Section 18 demolition disposition program, which has fewer requirements from HUD in terms of relocation than like a Choice Neighborhoods or Hope 6 back in the day would have had. But we're still doing everything that we can, even though it's not necessarily required of us from HUD. We are, of course, making sure not only that people have housing they can afford, but we're also looking to attach services or service funding to all those folks who are being relocated. So we're also hiring housing navigators, mobility counselors. We're bringing in more social workers on site to help deal with relocation trauma. We are providing transportation for residents to go look at potential housing possibilities elsewhere. We are really, I think, going above and beyond definitely what HUD would require of us, but it's what we are required to do as people who have overseen the decline in this property over the years and frankly waited way too long to do this kind of intervention. It's really what we have to be doing. But if you have any advice, Katie, on this relocation, please, I am all ears.
Well, interestingly enough, I tell my staff sometimes, I said, relocation is one of those things where you can do everything right, but it doesn't seem like anything was right. It is a difficult thing because people's lives, it's not as easy as a move. And that's the complexity of it. We've done them where we've said, oh, great, you're going to have a dishwasher. You're not going to have a leaking roof. But yet you discounted proximity to their doctor. And taking all of those things in, it is so complex. Oh, my goodness. But you know what? Just listening to you, and I think I've seen you described as this, that you are the insider outsider. You are the person to be able to know the community and know the logistic hoops and the technical guidance. And so it's really interesting that you are like the right person at the right time to be able to tackle these. I don't know if you feel like that or not, but just hearing you describe all of the things and knowing that this is your community, it just brings a different level of attachment, doesn't it?
I really appreciate you saying that, Katie. I certainly have days where I think I have been well prepared for this position. Like, thank goodness I have had the jobs that I've had and worked with the people I've worked with and come from the place I come from, because this is all setting me up for this opportunity of a lifetime to lead LMHA. And of course, I also have days where I'm like, why can't I figure any of this out? Why is this so hard? Why is this not fixed yet? And so I really appreciate the encouragement that you're talking about. I think that I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of people to learn from here, but I'm really committed to doing it and doing the best I possibly can.
Well, as we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to highlight for us? You have a tall order and task there at hand, and you're making lots of inroads no longer than you've been there. Anything else you'd like to leave us with as we wrap up?
I'd like for everybody listening, everybody that cares about affordable housing, that cares about the people we serve, to understand how cool it is to live in Louisville, Kentucky, and to consider relocating here to Louisville and working with us at the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. The city of Louisville is rebuilding. We have a great mayor, Craig Greenberg, who is committed to affordable housing. We have a citywide affordable housing plan that is extremely ambitious. We have a housing authority that's in the process of stabilizing so we can better innovate. This is the time to come join us. So that is my charge to listeners. If it's not you, then it's certainly somebody you know that could come here and help us do what we need to do.
Oh, I like it. I've been to Louisville several times, and it is a pleasant city, and it is a city that is willing to listen to itself. It's really willing to tackle the hard issues and redefine itself. And you don't see that as often. And so for the ability to do that, that's some leadership and that's some real community. So that is a very good plug and a good way to end on this note. Thank you, Elizabeth. Again, I've been talking with Elizabeth Strojan, the CEO and Executive Director of the Louisville Metro Housing Authority.
Thanks for listening to Changemakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.